Welcome to the CPTM Smart Partners Hub. And after most successful and probably the best think tanking at the Hub last week, we still have with us one of the smart partner who joined the central bank governors, Moses, who usually is known as Moses the supercomputer since 2013 in Dar es Salaam, simply because we all met Moses in the Institute of Technology, where Tanzania had a supercomputer. And but I must say, lately, rather than saying Moses supercomputer, we could say Moses blockchain, or whatever he thinks he wants to say, that we should refer to him as. So welcome, Moses.
Thank you very much.
And we're very happy also that we have Joseph back. Joseph is the head of the Smart Communication Unit, Smart Partners Communication Unit, without whom data, information, and the pulse of the movement cannot be transmitted through webcast and through various digital means. So the central bank governors think tanking this year, the fifth one. Well, I must say that, I don't know if Moses would agree, in the words of the newcomer in the think tankers of this group, the central bank governors from Kenya, the financial inclusion phase that the smart partnership movement initiated through the last week think tanking is a financial inclusion 2.0. Now, why was this kind of conclusion? It wasn't only because of the fact that, like everybody else, central bank governors all over the world are being still looking at what financial technology can provide for central bank, including for financial inclusion processes, but because not the technology itself, but the governance and the interconnection between the central bank processes and all the other providers, as well as the main beneficiaries of the central bank, the population at large, not only the unbanked, the population at large. Yeah? It's because of that everybody is trying to understand and not to be behind, never mind where they are, be it in Somalia or be it in, which has a lot of instability, and that's the reason we mentioned, but there is not the only one, or be it in US, or be it in UK, as we've just seen it, or be it in any other country. So the central bank governors think tanking at the Hub last week on 30th of June and 1st of July was probably a turning point, both from the point of view of understanding the function that the central banks have in this new rapid developments, but also in terms of the entire digital, or as is being called, crypto type of economies that are evolving in a silent mode. There is a silent transformation taking place, which has to take place in as informed manner as possible. And the information is real time. So the think tanking just last week made the point that to be able to be part of the silent wave and deeper transformation that is taking place, one needs to have smart partnership type of interactions, and those are based on trust, as we know, based on building up ongoingly intellectual equity, not books, but ideas applicable to serve the people. So last week we had a sample of both preoccupation of central bank governors, leading ones from Africa, those who couldn't participate. They were there not only in spirit, but through contribution and preoccupations which were the same, like the central bank governor from Barbados, like central bank governor from Malaysia, or maybe new ones. So although they were not there, they were in London at the CPTM Smart Partners Hub a few days after a quite important and probably earthquake type of decision that took place in Britain, and which Britain is part of Commonwealth, so it's important for all those central banks who were representing Commonwealth countries. The referendum, the EU referendum. And it was very obvious during that day, 4 days after the announcement of referendum, that in Britain the function of the central bank was essential. So the central bank governors on 30th of June realized that the front page of the Financial Times was the central bank of England, who tried to manage the perception and the likely developments in relation to the economic implications of a referendum. So the think tanking last week was probably one of the most timely, best information that one could have, both from the point of view of the financial inclusion, from the point of view of the subtleties of decision making in relation to adaptive flexibility, but also from the point of view of looking forward to what is taking place. So, as usual, we are going to have some records, not notes, records, both in a hybrid form, digital and otherwise, but some of the highlights from last week, which helped the observation I just made, were as follows. So I'll just mention a few, and I'll pass it on to Moses to mention the others. First of all, on the financial inclusion, Professor Beno Ndulu, who is the leading convener since last year of the financial inclusion in Smart Partnership Movement, in fact since 2013 in Tanzania, he challenged his colleagues to share experience of what happened in their own context in relation to the interoperability aspects within the financial inclusion processes. So the governors from Kenya, from Lesotho, from Zambia, from Swaziland, from Mozambique, from Malawi, from Zambia, enough backgrounds to understand that there is a pattern of what is taking place in relation to interoperability issues and how they are being managed. Of course, while discussion of interoperability was and various issues were brought up, issues related to digital technology were part of the discussion and the problems and associated with it. The kind of problems related to that technology which only 3 years before, there were only problems which they thought, the governors and the central banks, that is not their problem, is the technology community problem. Now, my personal and all of us, my partners who joined the governors, observation was that the central bank governors are of and articulate and integrated digital technology concepts into their own ability and to implement financial inclusion. It was most impressive, and if that happened among the 10 very representative governors, it must be the case among so many others. And of course, the purpose of sharing experience, it wasn't simply to kind of make a report about what's happening in each country. Was in fact to share and to listen to an observations from the others, and probably to follow up after that in relation to not being behind. Yeah. So that is the value of the smart partnership type of interactions, and that is what, in fact, they are aware of, and that's why they continue to wish to have this think tanking at the hub. There was a very clear indication that in addition to the financial inclusion among the counterparts, with the presence and support of the latest digital technology and crypto technology, there is a must need for exposure of these issues to the broader context of the governments, leaders, ministers of finance, private sector, not in a conference mode, but in a typical smart partnership type of dialogue mode, as, for instance, it took place in Dar es Salaam in 2013. There is a crying need for that sort of environment from the central banks, including the Bureau of Standards, including those who are involved in national visions. There is a need for a smart partnership type of sharing experience and exposure to the current developments that are taking place. So we are going to try to make aware our CPTM fellows and the Council of Patrons about this. But in addition to the specific aspects of the financial technology, which Moses will come in, the base of the basis of the new implications of digital developments was picked up again in the last few years as being things related to data. And the data in relation to central bank governance is connected with economic statistics. And the economic statistics, it takes one to the national statistics offices. So again, going back to Global 2013, in Dar es Salaam, we had for the first time on the agenda National Statistics Office through the leading chief executive of leading National Statistics Office in Tanzania, Dr. Chua Albina, who for the first time joined the CPTM Smart Partners Hub for the think tanking with the governors, and together with the statistics, head of statistics from OECD, and they made a case for a new closer link between and a closer relationship between the central banks and the statistics. Now the problem is that the digital implication for National Statistics Office to provide proper economic statistics is not a problem only for countries who are emerging economies. It's a problem of very old economies like Britain. So since last year, we were able to have the chairman of the review commission set up, a group set up to review the digital impact on the British National Statistics Office, and for which report has been shared, including the presentation in detail by Sir Charles Bean a couple of months ago through a webcast at the Hub. But he was very keen to join the central bank governors, having been himself a former deputy governor of Bank of England, and to share with them directly and with the statistics offices some of the key aspects of the findings that he wanted to make everybody aware of and to look into. But of course, also because of that review that took place in Britain, Sir Charles made a point about the importance of data, and we were able to, and data comes about visibly for the central bank governors into the emergence of the data centers. The data centers, or what is called aggregators, about which they talked as part of the interoperability. The data centers are a direct kind of, not rivalry, but direct kind of, they're in direct potential competition, if one would call that, with the national statistics offices. So, understanding data vis-à-vis new type of economic statistics, vis-à-vis the digital implications of the production of data, it was essential. So again, Professor David Hand, one of the most well-known economic statistics and specialized in data science, was able with the governors to give a bit of an idea about what this aspect of looking into data is all about. But that in itself is a bit too abstract, both for national statistics, for the technology people who are here, digital technology, but also for central bank governors. So what we CPTM Hub, what we arranged was an exposure of next day of the smart partners and Professor Mutebila from Uganda, the governor who was still in London, specifically for that purpose, an exposure to a data center, to a data science institute. Now we have this data science institute here, brochure, not to advertise for it, but simply because it's probably essential aspect of both for central bank governors, for the economic statistics, for the continued development and application of the technology to come. So data as such is essential, and data scientists and specialists in data is a job to be into in the next few years. So these jobs don't exist as such on any job employment. One needs to make people aware that there is a job of that kind. And one needs to ask quite a high salary, by the way, for that job. Am I right, Moses? So we went to the Data Institute next day. Why? Because there was an ability to visualize, to see how data in relation to financial transactions, and you'll explain more, they take place. Now, the data visualization was also part of our Global 2013, and the head of our Smart Communication Unit, if you remember, he put together with the colleagues in Tanzania how many screens? About 8 or 10 screens.
16.
LED screens,
yeah,
which were able to provide a visual kind of signal about the high-tech and national visions. So the data visualization in the Institute of Technology, Imperial College, is specialized to assess financial transactions and many other aspects of science where data is important. So I suppose, in addition to the fact that we're very sorry that the new central bank governor in Sri Lanka, Indra J. Kumaraswamy, Dr. Indra, was not part of us, not probably even knowing that he will be appointed as central bank governor, and he was part of the CPTM for many years. We're very sorry he wasn't with us, but we hope he will be joining us, and we wish him all the best in the years to come. So now, Moses, could you go into the blockchain and the financial technology? And probably you can cover a little bit about the standards, or I'll come back if you want.
Thank you very much, Mihaela. Like the way Mihaela introduced me, my name is Nkundwe Moses Mwasaga. I'm a lecturer from Dar es Salaam Institute of Technology.
We will still call you Moses Supercomputer stroke blockchain. That's how UMPO is referring to you, and many others in Cameroon. Yeah.
Precisely. The discussion that we had last week was very productive, like the way Mihaela extensively just explained on the topics that we discussed. We deal with financial inclusion, issues of statistics and data. And 1st of July, we had a discussion on digital landscape initiative, where we discussed all image technology that were in the discussion on 30th of June. And some of them, and which is very interesting to discuss is now, is the development of blockchain solutions, which are aiming at providing solutions in the financial sector that will improve transparency and trust. As we all know, blockchain technologies, they aim on that, creating solutions that they improve trust and also transparency of the systems which are provided. Since 2013, we have been discussing about the Digital Landscape Initiative, and we touched on a number of the things. And some of them is the digital infrastructure, where we extensively discussed about the networks. We discussed about the importance of supercomputers, as very extensively we've been discussing in here, because these are building blocks which will enable all these new technologies to function properly.
But one of the building blocks we didn't discuss more extensively, may discuss later, is the one that we just talked about.
Absolutely.
But we mentioned about the land registry as data, basic data.
Yes, like the way Mihaela, you have intervened very precisely, that we would like to say that blockchain is increasing transparency and trust in any service that is needed into processes that are offered in a certain sector. And it's very true that blockchain can be applied in a land registry, because we all know that land registries, they need high level of trust and transparency on how the data are stored and how data can be updated. So this type of technology basically is a very fit for such a kind of challenges that many countries.
So that is an example of data. That's
Absolutely.
why this data is here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, as the way we discussed, we know that data, when you collect data and you store them, data, for it to be trusted, one has to be very sure that it cannot be manipulated. So to reduce that challenge of data being manipulated, blockchain is needed. So in any databases where data are stored and data can be can be processed to be, for example, statistics or to be in another form, blockchain technology also is needed. It very, very much.
But it's particularly needed in the financial transactions.
Absolutely.
Is that the reason why I found very mature
Absolutely.
the reaction of the central banks, of the governors,
That's
saying it's not that we are Luddites.
Yes.
It's just that it's a very, very high risk, the adoption of a blockchain within the financial sector, not for the banks, but for the people that they are serving.
Absolutely.
So it looked like they were quite taken back by the implication they've seen from the blockchain solutions that we brought for them. Yeah, they're taken a bit back, and they're trying to protect themselves from being pushed to get something which it was the right kind of reaction. But on the other hand, even in Bank of England, just 10 days before their meeting, bank hours, there was a financial technology fintech accelerator that was set up within the Bank of England to study the implication of blockchains for Bank of England.
Absolutely.
So this is what to study. And also there was this standards that for the blockchain, that Standards Australian who sent a message.
And to say the truth, Mihaela, I was very, very impressed by for the message from Australia on the issue of to initiate the process of developing standard on blockchain internationally, because this is needed. As we have seen in this landscape, we can call it the landscape of blockchain technology.
I think so.
There are a number of startups which they are doing a very good job of providing solutions in financial sector. Now, since startups, they've moved a bit far in providing the solutions, so I think it's high time that we need to have international standard for that.
But it was quite clear that there are standards. Having International Telecommunication Union again part of our group, like last year,
which is
Vijay
Mari, he presented something very good, and actually I'm very happy as being Tanzanian, because in September, as he promised us, that's where they are going to discuss thoroughly on that
with the telecoms
operators,
the digital financial
services.
Yes.
They are going to be gathered in Dar es Salaam, which is very good. So this number of standard will enable to legitimize the technology. We're not saying that the technology is not legit, but once technology is operating in an environment where there are standards,
then it's possible to function.
It becomes possible to function, and then even governance, they can start to build trust on the technology that is offered. One point that I wanted to say...
The British Standard Institute also produced just a week before the governors came here. They just announced this pass, which is towards a standard 212, that Dr. Scott, the chief executive of the British Standard Institute, announced it to what is called the hypercat, the hyper catapult, hyperspace. It's about automatic resources discovery for the Internet of Things. And they made it available for the think tanking group here. So alongside the standards in Australia, and
there are a number of initiatives which...
And what was extraordinary, isn't it, Moses, was that Eve, let me put that forward because I'm very keen on that. Eve from the Zimbabwe, the head of SARS, is part of the Quality and Standards Inclusive Initiative, the Smart Partnership alongside Lomkosi, Rosie, and everybody else, and Ben from Uganda and everybody else. They were captured by the idea that the Standards Australia is offering a possibility. We don't know yet if ISO, International Standard Organization, is going to approve the idea of going ahead with a blockchain standards, but most likely they will. And because of that, the Standards Australians' message, the chief executive, was both to the central bank governors to join them, because the Reserve Australia joined them, but also the other colleagues, the Bureau of Standards, like the Quality and Standards Inclusion Initiative in the CPTM context. Why? Because rather than being standard takers, there is an opportunity now to be part of standard makers. And standards, making a standard on blockchain, will be essential for central bank governors.
Absolutely. And actually that's a very good point, and I'd like to take on what VJ Marie explained on the processes, on how...
those are on the telecom side, because
Exactly.
there are these different aspects
Players,
of standards in the interoperability process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that I was very interested is the way they build their working group, because the way they work is they create a group that involve different players, and it really assured us that the financial sector was well represented, because the way we have been discussing about blockchain 2 years ago, the way it has been evolved
Is with telecom people.
yeah, it evolved with the telecom
And the
people
technology people.
Yes, and the concept they keep being refined very well, because previously, as you can remember, there was a certain protocol which was very famous in the world, which was actually the first protocol to use blockchain, which is Bitcoin.
Yes.
The main concept of what they wanted to do, it was trying to change on how the landscape of financial institutions is operating, to try to bypass central bankers. And I think that idea wasn't very welcome very well in the financial industry. What I like now, they've improved so much, and the way we have discussed last week is both parts, they were able to explain things that they think that they have to research more about it. Startup companies, they're providing very good solutions, and central bankers, they have to assure themselves.
But
So
I suppose we're
parts,
relying on them
exactly.
to make sure that the telecom interaction, digital financial service with the telecom group.
Absolutely.
Because you see, if you take Professor Benno's concept that you need a national framework
Absolutely.
for everything, a smart partnership type of framework, otherwise you can't work separate. So you have the central bank,
Right.
we have the statistics,
Yes.
must have. You have to have the telecom,
Yes.
you have to have the Bureau of Standards,
Yes.
and you don't have them simply as a committee. You have them by the way of something that needs to happen.
Absolutely.
And there is now what needs to happen.
And exactly, like if you can remember last year, we touched on the framework on how these types of initiatives can work.
Yeah.
And it's a fact that blockchain and other digital technologies, they are operating in a multi-sectoral framework.
That's it.
For it to work, you need to have regulators of telecommunication industry. You need to involve the standard bodies of the country. You need to involve, for the case of the financial solutions, central bank, which is very important.
But on the top of
there's
it,
a last part that we
which
always
one?
not forget.
Yes.
Consumers, they have to be represented.
I have a problem with you saying consumers.
Right.
Because everybody's saying consumers. And if you look at data,
Right.
I'm not a consumer of data. I am a data. I produce data.
I like that concept.
So if you're reducing me to a consumer, like a robot, then we have machine learning to set up automation.
Well,
I'm not, and this is the case that UMPO, and we're very grateful to her,
right.
having experience for so many years into bringing into interactions from the grassroots,
Exactly.
the Vision 2016.
Absolutely.
The discussion and the provocation she made
Right.
to the Chief Executive of Statistics, Albina Chua,
Right.
and the OECD statistics,
Right.
about what is it good as statistics for me as from the grassroots. Can you tell me why should I be interested into this?
Right.
Because my preoccupation are something different.
That's very true.
And the idea that if you forget about how many cows and what you can do with a cow,
Right.
which is data,
Exactly.
and I am giving you the data,
Right.
so don't make me a consumer. Maybe the statistics and the central banks are consumers of data.
Actually, the concept that you said, the issue is consumer has to be defined in the context of the user.
Yes,
Users nowadays, they are both producers of
and
data
consumer.
and consumer of data.
Producers and, yeah,
Yeah. Now, to be able to produce data,
yes.
you need to have capability of acquiring technology. Not all the people, they have technology.
This is,
Majority of the people, they don't have
Yeah.
technology. They need to consume that data, and they have to be represented. That's why you find
they have to be part of it.
exactly.
So that's the point about standards. Australia,
Sta-
point of central
And those are
banks.
And those are the things they need to be included into the standard. And
That's a smart partnership.
That's a
Yes.
smart partnership, and that is the importance of having standards.
But you know something, what is coming out, but probably we should finish, otherwise the smart communication unit will never have us again. You see, when we say national standards and ISO and ITU should produce standards for these blockchain people who are, and the governors looking to see
Right.
when are they ready for me to minimize the risk to adopt them.
Exactly.
You see, the conventional processes to produce standards
Right.
are not adapted to the real-time development of the technology.
Absolutely.
You take 5 years or 3 years of voluntary consensus
Exactly.
that you try. No, in 5 years, we only started a year, where was it, Joseph? About a year ago, we started to talk about digital landscape with blockchain and big
Yep.
data and whatever.
Yep.
And look since last year up to now, how it evolved in a most, it's not enough to say exponential.
I think this is
So the way they do standards,
yeah.
they will have to adopt a different way of doing it.
And what you're saying there, it's a very good point, and it explained very well what we were discussing this morning on using Coletta Perez
Yes,
framework
yeah,
on how
that's-
technologies are evolving.
That's-
If you can look at this technology, we started to discuss about it 2 years ago.
We did.
But it looks now is a time that it starts to
Yeah.
change so fast.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
comes with different solutions.
Yeah.
And some of the solutions which previously we thought that they are good solutions, they have proved that, like the way Coretta's the diagram is showing, that when technology starts, technology will come, and then the one will die, and then
So there's a deployment and then the
yes,
development,
which
yeah.
is more resilient. Like the issue of the Ethereum, it proved to be a very good
What is
solution.
that? You're
but what-
speaking different language for
yeah,
all of us.
What happened? Like the way we discussed
What
last
is
week.
Ethereum?
It was a solution which was using a blockchain to do the purpose of like what others.
Is another blockchain solution.
Exactly, but it showed some
For the
things.
distributed autonomous organization
Absolutely.
type?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Anyway,
So
I
this
think
thing
we
is
want you,
improving.
because if we are kind of getting everybody into technology,
Right.
they will say,
But there's
that-
a last point that I wanted
okay,
to talk
that's
about.
the point, yes. The central bank governors
with central
keep an eye
bank,
on us.
with our financial institutions, there's an issue of risk analysis. And in the risk analysis, you analyze many aspects, including the technology
And the procurement of it.
and the procurement of it. So it's, we technology people, we really need to understand them. Just as we provide solutions that we know it will add value to the activities, they also have to do risk analysis of the technology itself.
But they don't have the methodology yet. They need development of specialized analytics for this. This is a major, alongside crypto, the analytics related to ongoing risk.
Absolutely. That's
Not
why
yet there?
in some banks, what they have done is there's a different method on how to do the risk analysis. Some of people, they do test bed. They work with fintech, developing something and study it.
Yeah.
Then with time, they can assure themselves. So I think this is a process that we need to be patient both to the startup sector and the financial sector, because financial sector without risk analysis.
But it's the same for technology,
it's the
because
same
you
to
can't
technology.
develop the technology without looking at the risks
Exactly.
of uptake or otherwise.
Uptake, yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think we already started the next think tanking. But I was thank very much to Joseph to allow us to go into an ongoing think tanking for our smart partners. But that proves again that we are extremely grateful to the think tanking group led by the central bank governors, that the 2016 get together last week at the hub was a turning point, both for their own way of thinking and approaching the adoption or otherwise, of the fintech for the financial inclusion and therefore for the people in their own countries and beyond the countries. And also for the Smart Partnership Movement, because we were able, with the insistence and professionalism of Dr. Albina Chua, supported by Shelton from and colleagues from OECD. He's from Malawi, but he's extremely active in Paris 21 in OECD, alongside colleagues who weren't able to be here from other national statistic offices, such as in Uganda, in Tanzania, probably in Cameroon, and others who were invited, and alongside Bureau of Standards. And we are very grateful to everybody for having the courage to approach this multi-dimensional, real-time situation that is taking place currently in the world, in the digital economy. I thank very much to Eve, that's a final, on behalf of all the group in quality and standards. As usually, the quality and standard is ahead of everybody else, and she was able, as president of ARSO, the African Regional Standards Organization, who currently have in Tanzania, they had their own annual conference. Yeah. She was able to send a message to all the African African standard organizations through the ARSO, as a president of ARSO, an invitation to be part and parcel of the development of the new standards, such as blockchain, such as others required for interoperability in financial inclusion, and to work closely with the central bank governors. So thank you to the group, thank you to all those who weren't with us, but they were part and parcel of this most informed and most up-to-date think tanking for the Smart Partnership Movement.